March 24th, 2021. The purpose of the committee meetings are the city departments to pass along information to the city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of the city council, and the city administrator. The ordinance mandates the city administrator as chair of the committee meetings. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during the committee meetings. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings held at 7 p.m. in the city council chambers or virtually on the second and fourth Monday of each month. The first item on the agenda today is the approval of the minutes for the Community Development and Transportation Committee meeting, February 21st, 2021. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes by Councilmember Tizer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Judy. Any questions or comments? All in favor, please raise your hands. And it is, Councilmember Wilsey, are you voting? All in favor, raise your hands. Thank you. And it is unanimous. Moving on to no items for community development, so we're moving on to transportation. Item number 2, discussion of the state route pedestrian hybrid beacon. Mr. Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Let me share my screen with the slides. So here we go. So good morning, everyone. Can you all see the slides? Okay. So we are excited to finally be able to move forward with the pedestrian hybrid beacon on Highway 9. This is going to provide another pedestrian crossing opportunity between City Hall area and Canton Street. So the proposed pedestrian hybrid beacon will be located between Elizabeth Way, you see on the left of your screen, and East Alley parking lot entrance is right there. So this is where the pedestrian hybrid location, hybrid beacon we designed for at this location. So we finally received the signal permit from GDOT and about a month ago, but it is conditioned on making the East Alley parking lot entrance right here a right-in only access. So currently it's full access, and with this median for the pedestrian hybrid beacon, left in was not going to be possible anyway, and left out was going to be kind of blocked as well. And GDOT is not going to allow a right out, because if you notice, the right out movement would be between the pedestrian crosswalk and the stop bar where vehicles would stop. So any vehicles exiting would not be able to see the indication, the signal indication. So that's why GDOT has conditioned the approval on a right-in only access. So we have shared that condition with the Merchants Association and didn't hear any opposition. They understand it's a condition of the approval of the pedestrian hybrid beacon. And we have also shared that condition with the public safety departments and environmental public works department in the city, and they are also good with that. So this is just an example, a generic example of what our design would look like. So we're going to have the median, which will be a grass median. And if you notice, the crosswalks, they are staggered, and that's an added safety feature to face the pedestrians to the traffic while they are in this median before they cross in any direction. And the good news that we heard from the conversations with GDOT is that they are willing to pay for it and lead the construction within this fiscal year. So the estimated cost is about $170,000. So that is direct savings for the city if you choose to allow GDOT. And they anticipate the construction to be finished in about 4 to 6 months from now, and as long as you authorize them constructing it. So staff is recommending to allow GDOT and save the city some money here. And the next steps, if you choose to allow GDOT, then we'll probably won't have to come back to the city council. And unless you want to build it with the local money, then we may have to come back to you with the final a construction contract, basically. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mohammed. Any questions from the council? Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Mohammed. I just have a aesthetics question. How will this look compared to the one that's up in Alpharetta, that crossing that they have? How will ours compare? What will the differences be, and what will the similarities be?
Well, it's a pedestrian hybrid beacon. So the indications and the operation would be exactly the same. And we are also using mast arms. So it'll have the metal poles and arms. And that's what I guess makes the difference. It looks a lot more cleaner and aesthetically better than a span hanging overhead. So this is going to be a mast arm pole installation. That's why it's costing a little extra.
And what about that island area? Is that going to be similar to the way that Alpharetta's is set up?
So no, this is just going to be a grass median. It's not going to have that double header curb. GDOT does not allow that anymore, and we're not planning for any landscaping and no fancy landscaping in the median. It's just going to be a grass median.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Councilmember Tyson.
Motion to approve staff's recommendation to have GDOT construct and pay for.
Motion to approve, move forward. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Judy. Any further questions or comments from the council? All in favor, please raise your hands. And it is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 3, consideration to sign an agreement with Georgia Power for the relocation of utilities required by State Route 140, Holcomb Bridge Road and Warsaw Road, Big Creek Parkway Phase 1, TSPLOST project. Mr. Rolfe.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. So this item is the Big Creek Phase 1, the Georgia Power Agreement. So here is the master graphic for our Big Creek Parkway project. So this current item is about the yellow, which is the intersection of Holcomb Bridge and Warsaw Road. City Council recently approved the construction contract for this project. So Georgia Power needs to relocate some of the utilities out of the way for us to build our project. So per the franchise agreement, if those poles are in the city of Roswell right away, Georgia Power moves them for free. But if they are in the GDOT's right away, then the city has to pay for them. So we haven't received the agreement yet. It's being worked on. We do not have a estimated cost, but it was all incorporated. We have rough ideas, but it was all incorporated in the project's initial cost. So we are seeking your approval today to bring this forward to the city council meeting for formal approval, along with the agreement, along with an exact number, but we don't have it today. So if you approve this today, whenever we receive the agreement with the amount, we'll be able to bring it straight to a city council meeting and save, some time there. So that's all I had on this one. If you have any questions.
Thanks, Mohammed. Any questions from the council? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Tyson. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Judy. Any further questions or comments? All in favor, please raise your hands. It is unanimous. Councilmember Tyson, are you voting in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on, item number 4, discussion of the Big Creek Parkway Phase 2 concept. Mr. Rolfe.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. So this is the Big Creek Parkway Phase 2 project. Just need some guidance today. So we are getting ready to go out to the residents for their input. We're going to go out virtually. in the next few weeks to get their input on the concept of the Big Creek Phase 2 project. We hope to do that in the next few weeks. And we just wanted to see if the committee, if you guys have any guidance at this time. We don't necessarily need any decisions from you today unless you have a strong opinion on something that you're going to see on the slides today. Or any of the other project elements. Otherwise, we'll just go out to public and seek their input. So this is the same master graphic for the Big Creek Parkway project. So what this item relates to is the green line and the blue line. So this phase, the Big Creek Phase 2, starts here at Warsaw Road and goes along parallel to Holcomb Bridge, upgrades the existing old Holcomb Bridge Road, goes along 400, loops around, goes over Georgia 400, and then ends at Old Alabama Road. So that's the Big Creek Phase 2 project. So some of the highlights of the proposed improvements that we are going to share with the public is there's going to be a new traffic signal at the future intersection of Warsaw Road and Big Creek Parkway. There's going to be a new traffic signal at Old Dogwood Road and Old Holcomb Bridge Road. I have graphics for that, so it'll be easier for you to look at that later. And then the new bridge over 400, the bridge replacement over Big Creek, which was a separate TSPLOST 1 project before the realignment approval, and now it's just a part of this bigger project. Left turn lane improvements as necessary, 4-foot bike lanes, a 5-foot sidewalk on one side, and a 10-foot multi-use trail on the other side. So this is what the public is going to see. So this is the section where the roadway section, not the bridge section. So we're going to have a 10-foot multi-use trail starting from the left of the screen, a 10-foot multi-use trail, a 5-foot grass strip, 2 4-foot bike lanes, 2 11-foot travel lanes, and then on the other side, a 2-foot grass strip and a 5-foot sidewalk on the other side. And then this would be the section over the bridge. This is a little different than the roadway section. So this includes a 10-foot trail on one side, 2 4-foot bike lanes, 2 11-foot vehicular travel lanes, a 5-foot sidewalk on the other side. And then if you notice, there's these parapet walls as a buffer for added pedestrian safety. So that's the section over the bridge over 400. So now here's the concept detail of that. So if you, again, Holcomb Bridge is seen at the bottom of the screen, and this is the new upgraded street. So you see CVS here in this corner. You see by the Dogwood Road, there is this Red Lobster, and then by Old Dogwood, there is the Waffle House. So starting here at the intersection of Warsaw Road and the future Big Creek Parkway intersection, that is the new traffic signal we talked about. And if you want to notice, the trail is on the north side along the roadway, and the sidewalk is on the south side of the roadway. And also notice these 1, 2, 3, and 4 pink dots. So these are the full building takes that I'm going to explain on a slide a little bit later, but just keep in mind these 4 pink dots here. So, and then the project continues along. You see the new traffic signal at Old Dogwood Road. Next graphic shows this just continues along Old Holcomb Bridge Road along 400, and then loops around, and you see how we're trying to avoid all the wetlands. So that's where it loops around, goes over Georgia 400. And then on the other side, on the east side of 400, the roadway goes along the Kimberly-Clark property. We need some land from them. And then you also see this Roswell Manor subdivision here. So our project predates this subdivision by many years. And then the roadway continues and ends at Old Alabama Road. So these were all the graphics. And then talking about the impact. So the 4 pink dots I mentioned, so there are basically 6 buildings. 3 of those buildings are apartment buildings with, on average about 10 units each. And then the 4th dot is one building, but 3 townhomes that are Habitat for Humanity homes. So total apartment units that are going to be impacted are approximately 30. And then there's 3 townhomes that I mentioned. And then again, that Roswell Manor residential townhomes, the road goes really close to their properties. So we don't necessarily need any right of way from them, but we do need some temporary easements. And we've had conversations with the HOA, and many of those residents came at the public meeting we had a couple years ago when we were talking about the realignment. And we've also been having conversations with Kimberly-Clark. So yesterday, like I said, we're just looking for guidance before we go out to public, and specifically, the typical section of the roadway, the roadway piece and the bridge piece. Any signal treatments, whether you would prefer mast arms or span wires, the roadway and pedestrian lighting, landscaping, and the name of the roadway, from Old Holcomb Bridge, you could change that to the future Big Creek Parkway, and the right-of-way impact. So if you have any input on those, we'd be happy to take it. And if not, we'll just go to the public and see what the public thinks. And if you remember, the bridge aesthetics, they were addressed as part of the Georgia 400 corridor aesthetics effort, where council's vision was to have all 3 bridges over 400 look the same. So bridge aesthetics for this one were kind of taken care of. So we're not seeking input on the bridge aesthetics anymore. That was decided by the council about a year ago. So like I said, we're gonna, with the help of Community Relations Department, we are gonna go out to public in the next few weeks for a virtual public input. So the anticipated cost of right-of-way and construction is approximately $45 to $48 million. So this estimate is it is exceeding the available TSPLOST 1 funding. That Warsaw connection that got added later on, the initial very rough estimate for that was about $5 million, and as it's looking today, it's going to be about $8 million for that Warsaw piece. So that's why the cost is kind of going above the estimated revenue. So if everything goes smooth, we can start procurement. If you remember, you approved us using the design build method, which is a unique method. We don't do that in the city normally, but for this large scale project, you approved us using that. So we could start that process in summer to fall of this year. And we are hoping for design of finalizing of the design and the right-of-way activities from fall of this year to summer of next year. And then construction could actually happen from the year 2022 to 2025. So for the next steps, again, we'll go out to public to get their input. And then we're hoping to bring the public input back to a work session in April-May timeframe. And then of course, we will need to have the funding conversation at that time as well. And then if it all goes okay, we hope to bring a design build contract approval at a future mayor and council meeting. So that's all I had on the slides. Do you have any questions? I can share the slides again if you want to go back to any of the.
Thanks, Mohammed. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mohammed. So I have two questions. One, the original plan for Big Creek Parkway, that was more money than even what you're showing as the increased amount. Is that accurate, Mohammed?
Absolutely, a lot more money and a lot more impact. If you remember, now we're talking impacts to 4 buildings and maybe 33 units, basically, approximately. But back with the other alignment, the initial alignment, we were talking 8 apartment buildings. That was a lot. Even now, it's still impact. A lot more with the previous alignment.
Excellent. And you actually just answered my second question, which was going to be, it was my memory that the first one actually had an impact to many more buildings and many more units than you showed today. So thank you, Mohammed.
Councilmember Judy.
Thanks, Gary. Mohammed, I guess my only feedback on this would be after the public input, which we'll take into consideration very heavily with I would say this is going to be one of our newest roads that the public voted on for TSPLOST, and so I would err in trying to make sure, be it the mast arms or landscaping and all that is at the top level, just like it would be in downtown on Canton Street, because it's going to be transformational road for us. So that would be my opinion on that to bring back after public input. And also I think the old Holcomb Bridge roads, I don't like names where you've got old Holcomb Bridge and new Holcomb Bridge. I prefer to go to the Big Creek Parkway because that's just me, because I get mixed up, like Peachtree downtown with 34 different peach trees. So that's my opinion.
Excellent. Thank you. And Mohammed, I actually have two comments now. Yeah, the first one is, at first I had no opinion between the two names, but Councilman Judy has actually just hit on a very big passion of mine. I think we have way too many streets in Roswell that all have the same name. And so I want that to stop. And so definitely like that we have a unique name with Big Creek Parkway. So that's one comment. The other comment is, Mohammed, as you are going to release this survey to the public, I want to make sure that you're really taking into account things that we've learned in the past. Number one is, if you're giving choices or asking for preferences, that we're spelling out, approximately what's the difference in cost, something like that. Again, we went through that in great depth during the bridge aesthetics. So that's one thing we want to make sure that's disclosed. And number two, I love that you're going to get public input. I think that's important, but I want to stress that if we're getting public input, I really want to make sure we're taking it into account. I'm going to be paying attention to that a lot more since the strategic plan survey, et cetera. So just be very conscious of really what you're asking the residents and making sure that you're completely clear and detailed, et cetera.
Yes, thank you, Gary, and thank you, Mohammed, for the update. Couple of things. I also agree with prioritizing the aesthetics and design, depending on, especially following the input from the community as that comes back. And I look forward to regrouping on this in a couple of weeks. Also agree with changing the name to Big Creek Parkway. I think that's it's only fitting to rename this very important road for us. Another question I had is just basically the construction order. If you could just remind me, is the construction, will it be moving from west to east, from east to west, or basically where does the actual construction work begin?
So yeah, that's a great question, Councilmember Wilsey. So the way it goes is, we're going to hire a design build team. So it's really up to them what they think is the most efficient and cost effective way for them to construct. But right away is gonna dictate some of that construction scheduling. You know, the right away on the eastern end seem a little easy. So that's another benefit of having a design build team. Remember, we mentioned it saves time. So this firm can actually, you know, acquire right away on certain pieces much quicker and start construction there while they are still acquiring right away on the other end. So the western end, like that, closer to Warsaw Road, that's going to take some time. So probably that's going to be towards the end of the construction timeline, because it's just going to take them a lot longer to acquire right away where there is occupants in the buildings.
Right. And given that, will you be able to open it in phases, or will it be, wait until the entire piece is completed?
It looks like it should be. It could be open to you know, public in phases. And if you think about it, most of it has access to, you know, properties, so which they cannot, the contractor cannot shut that access down. They'll have to keep those accesses open. And I'm sure when the bridge is done over 400, they wouldn't have any problems opening that. And we can consider some of this input when we write the request for proposals for this one.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Spano.
Thank you. So regarding the public input, in order to set the proper expectation of the residents and taxpayers, could you, Mr. Roth, go again over the elements of the design that people will have a really true possibility to have an impact on? So, you know, we don't want to create expectations, false expectations. So I'm sure this will be good to mention again the elements that they can focus. And like Councilmember Palermo said, that we can really take into consideration the recommendation of the public.
So yes, thank you, Councilmember Zapata. So this is it is a little bit tricky, you know. So everything that I mentioned, the graphics I shared and the elements I mentioned, we're going to go out to the public and seek input. Now, after that, at the work session, you know, it is going to be what you decide. Staff doesn't make those decisions. Now, if public is going to remember seeing, you know, landscaping and pedestrian lighting questions at the public meeting, and then in the end at the work session, you decide not to include those for any reason, for cost reasons or for whatever reasons. So that would be the council's decision, not the staff's decision. So I hope I answered your question, but if you want me to go over those design elements, I can definitely go over that list one more time. It was on the slide.
Yes, please. You can, you know, reinforce again those elements so it's very clear where the public will be able to focus and provide input for our consideration. That would be great, please.
So yeah, so we're gonna seek public's input on the typical section of the roadway and the typical section over the bridge. So that means where or how wide the pedestrian trail is going to be, how much of the grass strip there is going to be, and the width of the bike lanes and the travel lanes and the grass strip. So that's the typical section. And then the signal treatment. So 2 brand new traffic signals are being proposed, whether the public and the city council, they want to see mast arms or span wire installation. There's, you know, these are all money decisions, basically. At the end, we're going to have to fund this project as well. So the roadway and pedestrian lightings along the corridor. So this is a pretty long stretch of roadway. So any aesthetic elements or any add-ons we were going to talk about, and you were going to want to put them and include them in the project, that's going to come at a significant cost just because the corridor is just a long corridor. Same goes with the landscaping. And then, of course, the roadway name, we'll still ask the public the question whether would they want to keep the old Holcomb Bridge Road name or they want to change it to Big Creek Parkway. And of course, the right-of-way impact, they're going to see which buildings are impacted and they're going to be able to make comments on those. And like I said before, we are not talking about bridge aesthetics anymore. You decided that many months ago already. So we're not asking public for their opinion on the bridge aesthetics anymore. And remember, we did that already. We asked the public and then the city council made that decision many months ago.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Mohammed, you get what you need? Okay, moving on to item number 5, discussion of TSPLOST renewal. Mr. Rolfe.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. So let me share the screen again. Okay, so this is the TSPLOST 2 renewal item. So we have we shared a detailed public involvement plan with you at the February Transportation Committee, along with some potential projects. And with the help of city's community relations division, we have gotten first round of online public input since that February committee meeting. And so we got public's preference on their on the project types and their suggested projects. So that public input is one of the things we are sharing with you today. And we are also looking for some guidance on the master project list that is included in your packet. So just to give you some quick background, so the Fulton County, with majority of the city's approval, Fulton County is getting ready to put the TSPLOST 2 renewal for the referendum in November of this year. And for that to happen, all cities must sign the IGA with Fulton County, along with the financially constrained project list by July 2021. So that means we'll have to have the project list, the financially constrained project list ready by a certain time, approved at a committee meeting and then at a council meeting. And then we'd be talking about this IGA. So we really don't have much time in between. So that's why, if you feel the schedule is a little aggressive, and if you feel we're having to do these big committee items, it's all because we have a very strict, tight deadline. So like I said, we went out to get some public input. So I just want to quickly share that with you. So the first question we asked, if the people taking the survey, they were a resident of the city of Roswell. So almost 90% said yes to that question, and about 10% said no. And this was question 1. Question 2 was just asking for their address, so I'm not going to share that here. So the next question was, which type of transportation projects would they like to see the potential funds from TSPLOST 2 spent on? And we asked them to rate the following project categories from least important to most important. So the first one was bicycle and pedestrian upgrades. So almost 56% ranked that as the most important. And then about 14% said the project intersection improvements were the most important. And a couple of examples we gave them were like Hardscrabble and King Road intersection, Pine Grove at North Coleman Road intersection. And then the next question was roadway and connectivity improvements. So the examples we used there was Mansell Road extension, Grimes Bridge corridor improvements. So about 14% considered that to be the most important. And then the next question we had was bridge replacements, and we used Norcross Street, Jones Road, and Oxbow Road bridges as an example. And only 6% thought that those were the most important projects. But of course, you know, for the general public, a bridge is a bridge. It doesn't really matter. But these are very important projects, and that's why staff initially suggested to put them on this list. And if they're not funded by TSPLOST 2, then we have at least a couple that the city must fund from the general fund in the coming years. You will see those requests on the budget, upcoming budget requests as well. So next question was, when selecting projects for bicycle and pedestrian improvements, what would you like the city to focus on? So the answer choices was providing more 5-foot sidewalk for people to walk on. So 42% said yes to that. Providing more 10 feet sidewalk for people to walk and bike on, and over 61% said yes to that. And provide more in-street bike lanes, and over 31% said yes to that. And then people provided some other input, and 23% provided other responses to that. So the next question, of all the category types mentioned in question 3, which one is the most important to you? Please select one project category that you prefer to receive TSPLOST 2 funding. So almost 68% said bicycle and pedestrian upgrades, and 15% said potential intersection improvements, and about 12% said the roadway connectivity improvements, and 5% said bridge replacements. So this is the next slide. So we had the master list, the master project list in your packets, and if you notice, it has about 70 projects. So that list includes projects from different adapted plans, such as Bike Ped Master Plan, North Fulton Comprehensive Transportation Plan, the Transportation Master Plan, special studies such as the East Roswell Economic Action Committee, the projects suggested by public as part of the public input survey we completed in the last couple of weeks. And the staff suggested projects based on their knowledge of needs around the city. So the very rough cost estimate for those 70 projects that you see on the list is about $150 to $200 million total. So if the TSPLOST 2 referendum passes, the projected revenue for the city of Roswell over 5 years is expected to be about $70 million for Tier 1, and about $12 million for Tier 2, and another $12 million for Tier 3. So realistically speaking, we are probably not going to be able to construct any Tier 2 or Tier 3 projects unless the revenues come in much higher than projected. So please keep in mind the 70 projects on the list, and which roughly costs about $150 to $200 million, and the projected Tier 1 revenue of about $70 million. So based on that information, staff, we're seeking your guidance today on any projects you wish to remove or modify the scope of those projects. So, and staff is really encouraging you to do that today, because by reducing the number of projects on the list, you will make your own final decision a lot easier, because we're going to have to get to a financially constrained list very soon. So, and also by doing so, we can seek a more focused public input, rather than putting 70 different projects in front of public for them to comment on. We could put much fewer projects in front of them to make comments. And it will also reduce the time and resources required to create, refine, and update the project scopes and cost estimates. And also, as I mentioned at the February committee meeting, we are also recommending not to add any new projects to the list beyond today. Staff has some ideas on how to reduce the number of projects on the list for your consideration today. And that's what I'm going to show you on some of the next slides. And please also keep in mind, removing projects from this list only means that they can't be funded by TSPLOST 2. They may all be good projects, good suggestions, but we could use other funding sources to fund those projects. So on the next slides, and those slides are actually also included in the packet. So you will see, so everything stays. The projects with green arrow, we're also suggesting to keep on the list. It's the projects with the red downward arrow at the end is what we are suggesting to remove from this list. And I'm just gonna go over all the projects that have a red or a green arrow in front of them quickly. If you are open to removing some of the projects from this list at this point. So if you look at number 4 and number 5, this is just the Pine Grove Road corridor. So for number 4, we are saying Mimosa Boulevard to Lake Charles. And for number 5, we are saying Lake Charles to Cobb County. So it's a big corridor, could be a very expensive project. So we broke that into 2 pieces. And we are suggesting to keep number 4 on the list for now, because it's closer to Canton Street. And number 5 is farther away. So we are suggesting to delete number 5 from this list and keep it for, future funding opportunities. And looking at number 6 and number 7, so that's the Riverside Road corridor improvement. So number 6 is Riverside Park to Old Alabama Road, and then number 7 is Riverside corridor from Old Alabama to Eves Road. So again, number 6 is closer to Highway 9, connects to the future historic gateway project, to the pedestrian bridge into Sandy Springs. So that seemed like to be a higher priority. So we are suggesting to keep number 6 on the list for now and remove number 7 from this TSPLOST 2 list. So if you're good with that,
you want to take questions as we're going along? I see Councilmember Judy's hand up, so I don't know.
Absolutely, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, Councilmember Judy.
Yes, I don't know. I'd like the opinion of the mayor and council on this. $200 million in projects, and looking at this kind of in this format is a little overwhelming. And I think this is such a important element that this is going to be on the ballot in November, that we need to get this right. I don't know if this should be a work session that we do, because this is a lot. We could go through this today, but it's a ton. That's just my opinion on this. I think that there's, looking at this the way we're looking at it might be a bit in a vacuum here. So just my opinion.
Councilmember Woolsey.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Matt. I would agree. A couple of suggestions. I would love to see how these how they can be consolidated into some broader projects that we're talking about. Like, for instance, the bike ped master plan, like which projects would follow underneath that plan, so that we can look at them in categories, and then also to see them on a map and get a chance to go out and actually look at the locations and see how they're distributed across the city.
Councilmember Flaherty.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Councilman Judy. I don't think this process is the right process. My thoughts are a different take, given that I know we have a tight timeline. Is Mohammed, you're asking to kind of walk through everything you have and just talk about what we want to delete. What I'd kind of prefer, I'll just throw it out there, an idea of is, Mohammed, if you sent us an entire list of what you're seeing as the everything, and then asking us to kind of send back and kind of get that as a starting point, because I'm just concerned this list is too gigantic, that, you know, the amount of time we're going to spend on each item, and especially when some of them should probably be quick discussion. So, but whatever the right process is, I think this is not it. I'll tell you from my review of the packet, just some high level thought processes I had were, actually probably 3 high level processes. One is, this is going out to the voters, so this needs to really be something that's clear and beneficial for the voters. And obviously, I realize you've got some things on there that obviously anything related to transportation is beneficial, but I think it's something that needs to really be clear. Kind of here's the benefit to them, and then also some other things I saw and kind of when reviewing it. I feel you know, if we're going to ask the residents' input, which I'm glad we did, we need to take it. So clearly there's a big focus on the multi-use trails and the bike ped master plan and things like that. So I'm going to be certainly wanting to see a lot from that. Also from the survey on projects, probably what I'm going to want to be looking at is at the very least getting to council with the list, and hopefully a shortened list would include any of the items that probably had double-digit support or something like that, just as a starter to show that we're actually listening to the residents there. So that's something else. And then also in your list, when it comes to the bike ped master plan items, you specifically mention the side of the road. And I want to make sure we're learning our lessons from the past. And that's an example where I absolutely do not want us giving that level of detail, because we experienced all the heartache with things like Big Creek Park, Parkway, Oxbow Road, all these different aspects by getting too specific. And instead, I think we need to be showing just kind of the big picture and not that level of detail. So those are kind of just my initial thoughts from when I reviewed the packet.
Mayor Henry.
I would like to suggest, I had this conversation with Mr. Ralph, and what I would like to suggest is that we as elected officials look at these projects and rank them individually and put down 1 to 10, you know, whichever way we want to do it. Number 1's the best, number 10's the best, you know, however we want to do that, but we need to rank them, and we all individually talk to our constituents. I will say that the survey was driven by groups or a group, and I would encourage you all to talk to citizens and business owners as we move forward. But what I'd like to suggest is that we number 1, that we look at staff's recommendations. We ask staff any questions that we have of them, but in the next week, because we are in a compressed timeline, we're not controlling when this train leaves the station. Fulton County is. So I would like to suggest that within the next week, we get back with a hierarchy or a priority list of what we would like to see on the list, because we do need to pare it down from 70 projects. I mean, we can't, it's so difficult to go to the public with 70 projects. However, you know, the public will be involved in this process the entire time. So if we can always present to the public, these are the projects that didn't percolate to the top, but if you feel as though those are very important to percolate to the top, then we can go with that. But I would highly suggest that we as elected officials prioritize these and give staff some direction.
Councilmember Timer.
Thank you, Gary. I pretty much agree with all the things that have been said. There's a couple of things that I think are important. One is that these projects get categorized. So if bike ped master plan is one category and bridge and roadway improvements is another category, maybe there's 3 or 4, 5 categories, Mohammed, so that we can scrutinize our way through those quickly. My concern would be that if we pick all of the bike ped master plan ones, which are important, and we don't pick the bridges, we're gonna, we have a chance that this project or this referendum could fail because we haven't thought about all of the different things that the city might need. And so this is one of the only ways that bike ped master plan and our list of $50 million worth of sidewalks can be completed. And so that's very important. So is making sure that when you get to the bridge on your bike or your golf cart or walking, you can still get across it because it hasn't crumbled to the ground. So if you could organize these, and then the last thing is, as it relates to sidewalks and bike ped, really need to see those on a map. And if the way you've categorized them as green and red would be fine. If you drew them on the map as green and red as your recommendations, that way we could see visually what it meant, and it would help us as we talk to constituents to say, here's why this was chosen or is suggested over this one, because as you can see, it connects here to here. I just have a hard time visualizing it in a list format, and I think everyone else will too. That should help us avoid some parochialism in this whole thing, because I think people would understand if you're connecting two important things together and you see it on a map, that makes a lot of sense. But I think we all should think about balance here and making sure that we get a good balance of projects, and also that we get the maintenance, the long-term maintenance things that need to be done into the list. And that would be my suggestion. So Mohammed, categorize the lists, get them back out to us, and map the bike ped stuff so we can really see what really fascinating stuff we'll be creating by doing it.
Yeah, Henry.
And piggybacking on that, those comments by Councilmember Tizer, this council has never been involved in a bond issue or a referendum for TSPLOST. So what he's saying is very true. We, as elected officials, do need to require that balance in the projects. And the way I have always described it is, whether it's a bond or a referendum, you've got what I call sexy projects. Those are the things that people are like, oh, this is cool. If we have this much money, we can do this, 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 and this. But then the non-sexy projects are things like bridges, which bridges are very expensive. And we, our city roads, the state has cut back their bridge program drastically. And there is really no state or federal funding on bridges these days. Hopefully it comes back. But so on our local roads, we are required to maintain those bridges and keep them up to safety standards. So I would encourage you all, and I think that we do need to include a really good mix of projects that are the sexy projects and then the not so sexy projects. The sexy projects will carry the TSPLOST, but then we also have to remember that we, as elected officials in the city of Roswell, are required to make sure the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens are maintained. So I would encourage you all to look at that as well.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Gary. And Mohammed, I may have missed it, but could you put an estimated cost by these projects so that we know kind of what we're working with?
So we don't have individual project costs yet. That was one of the things we were going to work going forward. And again, when we talk about, just a scope to come up with a cost, we're just not there yet. So that was one of the reason going through that effort for less projects is of course quicker and more focused versus 70 projects. So if we need to, come up with some rough scope of all 70 projects and come up with estimated costs, so that would be the next step for staff to do.
just even a very broad, this is like a $10 to $20 million project versus a $2 to $3 million project would be helpful to me.
Yes, we have that level of comfort with the numbers. Yes, we have those.
Thank you.
Councilmember Palermo.
Excellent. Thank you. And I think I agree with all the mayor's points, and especially just the path forward of prioritization and having us each prioritize. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think I would definitely, like Councilmember Hall saw, I definitely want to know, is it around a $1 million project or around a $100 million project? So knowing there'd be no calculation that you've put into it. So that's one thing. Another thing is maybe a little clarification or explanation when you mentioned corridor improvements, kind of really spelling that out. What exactly does that mean? That's something I want to see. And then lastly, what I'd want to see too is, I know some of the projects, I believe, at least I know from the survey, some of the projects that scored the highest are actually already funded. So one of them was the Gateway project. That's obviously funded. And then another one was the turn lane at Woodstock Road at the Bank of America. That's something that's already funded. So I definitely want to make sure that it's really clear which of these items are already funded. So that's one that we certainly should not be using up our priority spots for things that are already funded.
Councilmember Spada.
Thank you. So, definitely there are a lot of projects, but I always think in order to help to prioritize, creating a matrix is very helpful in terms of visual and in terms of helping you to put different projects in terms of positive impact regarding safety and mobility criteria and the cost. In one side you have the cost, high, medium, low, and the other one you have the positive impact taking in consideration safety and mobility criteria. And then you start putting on all these different quadrants the different projects. So, my criteria will be first focusing on the high impact projects at the low cost. So those are the ones that I will put up on my list. So I think that is an exercise that also helps everybody to really have some data analysis to prioritize. Because if not, it's very hard. It's just gut feelings and whatever, but to be more scientific, I think that creating a matrix will help everybody to prioritize. I believe that everybody will like to focus on high impact, low cost projects first versus low impact and high cost second. So I think that creating a matrix will help everybody, not only this council, but also the public, to really have a well-informed recommendation in terms of which projects among all these 70s should go for a referendum. So that is my suggestion. I know it's going to be very hard maybe to put cost at this point of every single project. I understand that, but at least a rough estimate of the cost will be very helpful for everybody because if it's not high impact and low cost, then people might say, oh, I love this project, but you know what? Only 10 people in the city will use it and then cost $50 million project. Okay, well, I get it. So no, I don't support this project. I support this other project. So I think that give a really good perspective to the public at the time of getting behind projects for the referendum. That is my suggestion and recommendation.
Yeah,
I would like to reiterate that number one, we are on a compressed, aggressive timeline. And when I say aggressive, I mean aggressive. And with this TSPLOST project, there are a lot of moving parts. And it is going to be up to this body to either pass this TSPLOST or not pass it. So in so many words, what I'm trying to say to you is, this is where the rubber meets the road, no pun intended, Mohammed. But this is where this is what you were elected to do. And this is the timeline where you all, and I'm including myself, are going to have to be working overtime on this project. Now, having said that, I would like to go back to the what's on the shoulders of staff. Staff did not choose this timeline. They're trying to pull information together for us to make good decisions, and I appreciate that. But then also, I want to reiterate that when staff gives a ballpark figure on cost, I would like staff to clearly mark that on every document, because what I don't want to happen is if staff says this is a $1 to $5 million project, and then it comes in at 6, 7, whatever the case may be, that we wave that in their faces and say, oh, no, you said this was going to be a 1 to 5. So please understand, we did not choose this timeline. This is a Fulton County timeline. We have to deal with it as best as we can. That includes us as electeds, that includes staff. So I think that it's very important that we all work together and that we prioritize these projects, and staff is available to answer your questions. Please, they know how important this is. Trust me, it's important to the citizens of Roswell. So it's time for all of us to step up to the plate and get this done. That includes us as elected officials.
Councilmember Tizer.
Thank you, Gary. Inside Councilmember Zapata's discussion or comments, there was, I think, a nugget that can make this easier. And I would suggest the following: give us the map of the bike ped items, Mohammed, with your reds and greens. Divide these items up into somewhere between 1 and 5 categories and give us those sheets. And on those sheets, rather than trying to give us a cost estimate in dollars, and this is the piece that I think Councilman Zapata might have hit on something, just give us a high cost, low cost, medium cost, right? And you can, you don't even have to define those in dollars. Just give us an idea of where they fall, because I understand the problems that you might have. You might not know if a given piece of sidewalk is $1 million because of topography, or $1,000 because it's nice and flat. And so going through, trying to get down to any numbers closer than that, I understand the issue, but I think you might be able to do high, medium, and low, and you can define those pretty much any way you want. And then after we pick through those lists, I think then we'd ask you to come back with maybe some better dollar ranges at that point. But I think those 3 things might be able to get us where we can come up with some decisions for you.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. I just wanted to come back to the projects that are already funded, like State Route 9 does have TSPLOST funding. My question is, can we get additional TSPLOST funding? I believe the amount that exists for that is $3 million. Would this TSPLOST be too late because that project is already going, or would it be possible to have some allocated to the already prior TSPLOST for additional aesthetics?
So yeah, that's easy. We can add any existing TSPLOST 1 projects on the TSPLOST 2 list if we want to put more funding. That's actually line item number 70 on the list, I believe. So some contingency for existing TSPLOST 1 projects. So I think this was all very helpful, great input, Council. We appreciate that. And, we had to put something in front of you, some suggestion to get that input out of you. So mission accomplished. I mean, I'm glad that was all good input. And I think we can put something in front of you guys. And those maps that you're talking about, they're almost ready. We just didn't have them ready last week. and we have some costs, but not all costs. So we'll definitely get in touch with you guys through Gary's office and put the maps and some spreadsheets in front of you for you to start providing your ranking. So we do have a few more slides, not on the project selection, but there is a few other questions that we would like to put in front of you. So I want to share my slides one more time and run those questions. So let's see. Okay. So, okay. So can you all see the screen now? So this is, so we need, some guidance on some special items. That's the next 2 or 3 slides. So the first one is, if you remember, you made a decision about a month or so ago that you didn't want to include funding for any transit type projects within the 3/4 of the penny sales tax. So that was a decision you made. So the county came back and they are suggesting for the cities to have a 10% of the revenue line item. So on this project list that you have in front of you, the one line item could be 10% of the total revenue. So out of the 70 million, it could be 7 million for transit. That's the county's request to every city. Not every city is on board with that, but that's one thing that Mayor Henry needs to state the city's position at the next all Fulton County mayors meeting in a couple of weeks. That's first Friday of every month. So we just wanted to put that in front of you one more time since the request came from the county.
Mayor Henry.
Okay, and thank you, Mohammed, for framing that. This basically, MARTA has come back and is really, really pushing hard for us to include in our, we'll have approximately $70 million if TSPLOST passes, approximately $70 million for projects. MARTA's pushing very hard for us to allocate 10% of that 70 million for transit. And their argument is that in order to get state and federal dollars, the local municipalities need to step up to the plate to provide funding for that, because their argument is the feds won't fund any of this unless there's buy-in at a local level. I am not going to speak for the rest of our sister cities in Fulton County. However, this is not being looked upon kindly. So I do need to vote on behalf of the city of Roswell, as Mohammed said, in the first Friday in April. So between now and then, I do need you all to let me know whether or not you would like to include 10% going to transit within that 70 million. And I will ask each and every one of you to sign off on that before I vote in that meeting.
Judy.
Will this 10% out of our TSPLOST go directly to Roswell-based transit projects, or will it be countywide?
Countywide.
And we won't have a opportunity to direct that up here. It could all be used, either here or south up here, or even in South Fulton, or nowhere in Roswell.
It would go straight to MARTA for their discretion.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, following up on the question from Councilmember Judy, then this means that for this 10%, or approximately $7 million, we don't know exactly which will be the project to tackle with this money?
No, we do not.
Thank you.
I don't know if you all are willing to give me an indication today on how you would like me to proceed. That vote that I have to make is a week from Friday. So if you all are comfortable giving me direction today, I am more than happy to take that. But if you'd like a couple of days to look at it and get back to me, I'll have Kathy send out a email.
Councilor Kaiser.
Mayor, I'd like to have a couple of days. I've got to think about the concept. Certainly, Councilmember Judy's thought process is right on. You know, would be a lot easier if we were asking our citizens to use that money here in Roswell versus putting it into a pool and then perhaps not even seeing any benefit. So I just want to think through that a little bit.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the council? Mohammed, did you get what you need?
So I have a few more slides, Gary, so it should be long. So okay, so here is the next slide. So, you know, the project number 38 on the list is Nesbitt Ferry Road. So what we have in our minds is some sidewalk gap filling projects along Nesbitt Ferry. That's the request we get from our citizens. But the city of Johns Creek recently reached out to the mayor's office. What they want to do is a corridor improvement along Nesbitt Ferry Road. They are willing to pay for majority of the construction funding. They are willing to take the lead on the project as long as we issue them permits. So we need your guidance today. What type of project would we want to see? Would we just want sidewalk gap filling project all paid for by the city of Roswell, or we want to partner with the city of Johns Creek for a corridor improvement project? So that means maybe a trail on one side, a sidewalk on the other side, some intersection improvements, some turn lanes. So, and if we partner with the Johns Creek for a corridor improvement project, they are willing to, you know, put in the most of the money, majority of the money. But of course, these are staff level conversations, but at the least they're requesting for the city to put a corridor improvement project on the city's list. The right of way is 100% in the city of Roswell, but majority of the roadway users are probably city of Johns Creek residents. That's why they have a lot of interest on that corridor.
Councilor Palermo.
Mohammed, is this the same one that was actually even before you took over, where Steve Asenbrack was still here? I remember there was a turn lane addition and corridor improvement that Johns Creek wanted to make. And basically Steve Asenbrack's public guidance in a meeting was that frankly, it helped the residents of Johns Creek, but it did not help the residents of Roswell, because if anything, just created more cut through traffic through Roswell. Is that the same project, or is this different than that one? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's the same project. So Roswell has some large subdivisions along Nesbitt Ferry, you know, Nesbitt Lakes being one of them, and a couple of apartment complexes. And we do get gap filling requests all the time. It is on our sidewalk matrix as well. So I don't see that a corridor.
Well, no, to be clear, I'm fully supportive of the sidewalk aspect. I'm talking about the additional turn lanes, is what Steve Asenbrack was saying, that would not be helpful for traffic in Roswell, and in fact would be adding traffic to Roswell.
So I feel this Nesbitt Ferry is a regional corridor already. Improving it, I don't think is gonna bring additional traffic to it, but it would definitely improve the operations of the corridor. I think it's a good project, and I feel that if the other city is willing to pay majority of the money, then I think it could be a good project for the city residents as well. What would not be good for the city is to maybe talk about giving up the right of way in favor of Johns Creek. That would not be a good idea, although that idea has been discussed in the past. So I would not suggest that.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mohammed. I guess a couple of questions. One, I would just like to maybe sit down with you and learn a little bit more about what the obligations from the city of Roswell would be for this corridor improvement. Being very familiar with the road and its connectivity into the East Roswell area, I'd love to get some community input on it and just to take a closer look at how, I mean, I really think that it would help bring more business and more people into the Roswell area to do business and to, you know, to shop. And it would really, I think it would really improve the connectivity and mobility around here, because I know that a lot of people use that. It does affect a lot of the big Roswell subdivisions that are on Nesbitt Ferry. And I think that it would help them get to this area, to the Centennial and Nesbitt Ferry area, instead of going further north for basic you know, routine business and restaurants and things like that. So again, I just like us to look at it, at what benefits it gives to Roswell, it gives to the community, and get some public input on it as well. And I'll be reaching out to some folks and seeing what they think about it, for sure.
Mayor Henry.
Councilmember Wilsey, the reason why this is percolating to the top today is because Johns Creek is, I'm assuming, they're talking about it, they're going to include that as a TSPLOST project. What I'm hearing you say is that if we were to fund it, it would not be a TSPLOST project, because you would like to go through a public process and it would be funded out of our general fund and not a TSPLOST project. Am I hearing that correctly? Because in this aggressive timeline,
right,
we're constrained. So
right.
We're not saying today that this is a bad project,
right,
but what we're looking for is guidance on, should we include it as a TSPLOST project? Because Johns Creek will likely be including it, but we can always fund the project not from TSPLOST dollars. So we've got two options there.
Right. I guess I'd like to understand what the specific costs are, and then discussing the community benefit.
So I'm thinking that you would like to pull this from the TSPLOST and have it as an independent project that we're looking at, because that would not be available in the timeline that we're looking at right now.
But you just said that Johns Creek is including it as a TSPLOST project.
Johns Creek has been focused on this. They've been focused on this for quite some time,
right,
and we don't control their TSPLOST list. But their portion, what they want to do, they're asking for TSPLOST, or likely to ask for it to be funded through TSPLOST. We don't have to follow suit with them. We can either fund it from the general fund or TSPLOST. But if you would like to go out for public input and get cost estimates on it, I'm suggesting that it not be a TSPLOST project, it would be a standalone project.
Okay.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Gary. I would just like clarification on the corridor. Is it from Holcomb Bridge Road all the way up to Scott Road? Is it the entire, which part of Nesbitt Ferry Road does it include?
So we're talking about all the way from Holcomb Bridge to the city boundary. That's beyond Nesbitt Lakes, a little bit north of Nesbitt Lakes, the whole stretch of the corridor within the city of Roswell.
So up to Old Alabama?
Well, the city boundary is between Nesbitt Lakes and Old Alabama.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. Another thing to consider too is actually Johns Creek has greatly increased what their offer was. So this was actually a top priority of theirs about 4 years ago or so, whatever that time frame was. but they actually only wanted to pay 50% of it. And that's where the former director Asenbrack had showed us that by adding the turn lanes there, what it did was it removed some backup in Johns Creek, but moved the backup to a new bottleneck on Holcomb Bridge Road, or I forget where it was. And so showed us that, and in which case that's where the direction was to not spend 50% on a project that was very beneficial to Johns Creek and created some additional traffic issues in Roswell. So I think another consideration is knowing that that this is such a priority for them and they've greatly increased their offer. I think we could always even look at potentially, are they willing to pay for all of it? In which case, is there the opportunity to still work together, knowing that we have the right of way and need a help? But I'm just throwing out ideas because, again, I have a concern with this being a priority. I'm certainly open to Councilmember Willsey's idea that this be something that we look through more of a public process longer term. But to Mayor Henry's point, I know this is not something that works for the timeline and the urgency for the list that we have to work out.
Councilmember Spano.
Thank you. So, Mr. Rock, do we know how much north this project from Johns Creek will go? Is going to be passing Newtown Park, or will it stop before Newtown Park, this project? Do we know how much north are they planning to go with this corridor improvement?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I asked that exact question not too long ago from my counterpart in the city of Johns Creek. So really, like I said, 96-97% of this project is in the city of Roswell, because in the city of Johns Creek, they already have the improved corridor. So it's mostly pretty much all within the city of Roswell. So it basically ends where the city boundary is. So
they won't continue to Newtown Park then, the project, or they have a project that will contemplate this on their own, because it always is 100% Johns Creek area. So, but there is a project for them to improve it as well, all the way north.
They already have improved section of Nesbitt Ferry within their city, where the city boundary ends for Roswell. It starts in Johns Creek where there is the cemetery. So that's on them to, improve whatever they want to do with it. But exactly beyond the cemetery is Mount Pisgah Church property. And they have recently improved the corridor from that point on into city of Johns Creek.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Mohammed?
Yeah, Gary, I just had maybe a couple more slides here where we need
Yeah, go ahead, man.
input. So, so the next item on the special items is so we had a couple of requests from the Recreational and Parks Department. They are listed on the big matrix as number 47 and 48. I believe Director Jeff Leatherman is on the call to answer any questions on these two projects. So number 47 is Chattahoochee River Park's multi-use trail, and then the Big Creek Park boardwalk. So we are suggesting, obviously, to keep these projects on the list, and we have gotten input from legal that these two projects are eligible for TSPLOST funding. So I guess we are good there. We don't necessarily need any guidance. So just talking about the next steps here. So we'll send the information to you through city administrator's office, and then we'll decide when we want to go back out to the public for some additional public input on specific projects. And timing wise, at the April Transportation Committee, we were hoping to bring the draft unconstrained tier 1 list with planning level cost estimates, but we'll provide that to you in advance of the meeting to get your input. And at May, we would want to have, at May committee meeting, we would want to have a financially constrained list. So we have very limited time. And I think rest of the schedule I already mentioned, going up to the approving the list at the city council meetings, and then getting over to the IGA with Fulton County at July mayor and council meeting. So I believe that's all I had on the slide. So I think we got the input we needed.
Thanks. Any further questions or comments from the council? Thanks, Mohammed. Moving on to item number 6, consideration of a resolution to establish a policy regarding placement of objects or structures as defined and set out in the charter for the city of Roswell, chapter 2.20, in parentheses 3.1, within city of Roswell right away. Mr. Holzer.
We're bringing this back because we all flunked the test last month. Nobody noticed that I allowed the wrong draft to be included. We focused on number 10 and the changes that y'all wanted to make on that, but failed to notice that my January draft that included the percentage vote of an HOA had not been included. So that's been included in this one. And I've got a request from Council Member Tizer and Hall to add to that. The way that this reads is if an application is made by an HOA, they have to have been show that it's been approved by 65% of the residents of the affected subdivision. And they have to include written consent. This is Councilmember Zapata's point, from any homeowner whose property is directly adjacent to the right-of-way in which the proposed object is to be placed. And what would be added, what I was requested to add is, notwithstanding the foregoing, if the proposed project involves only beautification plantings, the RDOT director is authorized to waive the voting requirement. So if it's anything other than a beautification, it would have to have that voting requirement. If it's just the beautification, then the RDOT director is authorized to waive that. Just wanted to make sure that was okay with y'all before we moved on to council with it.
Any questions from the council? Councilor Palermo.
And Mr. Halsey, since we've discussed this a lot, just want a reminder, please. Does this give the city the authority to revoke the permit at any time if the city changes their policy or anything else?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Councilor Esparza.
Thank you. So I have a question regarding about one of the second paragraph you read. I don't know if you make it different or not. And the HOA must include written consent from any homeowners whose property is directly at. Does it make a semantic difference putting any or all homeowners whose property?
No, I think any would mean that each and every one. If you say all, you might. I prefer any, because that way, if it touches it, they've got to get permission.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilor Tizer.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilor Tizer. Is there a second? Councilor Hall seconds. Any further questions or comments from the council? All in favor, please raise your hands. And it is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to administration, item number 7, approval for the mayor and or city administrator to sign a renewal contract with Trident Insurance Services LLC in the amount not to exceed $1,151,957. An additional amount of $12,480 is requested for a standalone active shooter and malicious act policy for Hiscox, and additional amounts of $2,500 for the National Flood Insurance Program through American Bankers Insurance Company, and $25,006 for cyber liability insurance through BCS Insurance Company, for a total not to exceed $1,191,943. Mr. Halsey.
Yes, we're asking that this be moved on our agenda vote to council. We worked with our broker to try to get the best quote possible. And while other cities and towns around the Southeast are seeing increases of 14 to 20%, ours stayed at 7%, in spite of the fact that the coverage itself, our assets are, I think it's up like 8%, properties up 7%, physical damage values are up 15%. So we think it's best with the market the way it is right now to hold what we've got for a year and then go back out to the market if things have improved next year. I would add that in the year 2000, when the current city administrator came on board, we were paying $1.2 million in insurance costs. So what you're looking at now is less than what was being paid then. And if you adjust that for inflation, it would be about $1,800,000. A lot of times it's very difficult to get credit for the negative, but I do think that you should note that the management of the risk involved to the city has gone down over the years, and it's reflected in the insurance costs. So we would ask for an agenda vote to move it forward.
Any questions from the council? Councilmember Judy.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the report by Councilmember Judy. Is there a second? Councilmember Tizer, is that a second? Any further questions or comments from the council? All in favor, please raise your hands. It is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to finance, number 8, consideration of a resolution to authorize the mayor to execute all documents for a Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank loan in the amount not to exceed $5 million to fund additional road resurfacing. Mr. Lucker. Ms. McCray.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Mayor and Council. This item is requesting consideration of a resolution to authorize the mayor to execute all documents for a Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank loan in the amount not to exceed $5 million to fund additional road resurfacing. On October 31st, Mayor and Council approved the submission of a loan application to the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank to fund additional road resurfacing. The loan was approved by GTIB in February, and staff is requesting approval to execute all loan documents. The GTIB loan program will provide financing in the amount of $5 million at an interest rate of 1.22% for a term of 15 years. Annual cost is estimated at $365,000 and will be paid from the general fund. I can take any questions you may have.
Thanks, Chair. Any questions from the council? Councilmember Tizer.
This is pretty exciting, and without further comment, I'd move to approve.
Thank you. Motion approved to move forward by Councilmember Tizer. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Woolsey, seconds. Any further questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Spada.
Thank you. Just a quick question. It's not that might be get done, but if it's possible, won't be any penalty to cancel the loan before the 15 years? I don't know if that will make sense, but eventually, you know, it's just a question.
So to cancel the loan, yes, it will be a penalty. It's 1%.
Of the remaining principal?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the council? All in favor, please raise your hands. And it is unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, Georgette.
Thank you.
Moving on to Recreation and Parks, item number 9, consideration of guidance on the submission of 2 projects for the community project funding request, 6th Congressional District, Representative McBath. Mr. Leatherman.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Mayor and Council, last week we were contacted by Representative McBeth's office regarding a reoccurrence of a program that from about a decade ago where representatives were allowed to bring community projects forward. Essentially, it was formally considered an earmark process in the federal budget. Last week, the city was contacted by the representative's office with a solicitation for community projects that could be submitted to her office for consideration in the upcoming federal budget process as a direct appropriation for projects that fit a number of categories. And the federal projects are fairly broad, as I included in my report. It could be community-related projects, it could be defense-related projects, it could be health and human services related projects, depending on certain federal budget criteria. As we went through the criteria, we're recommending 2 projects for consideration and are looking for guidance from Mayor and Council today to submit those projects to Representative McBath's office for consideration in the deliberation of the federal budget. The first is our Sand project, phase 1 and phase 2, which is the riverbank restoration, floodplain restoration, and stormwater garden project that is currently under design. We expect those 2 projects to be designed and fully designed by June of this year. And the second project is the relocation and restoration of Docks Cafe. Both of those projects fit two different federal funding criteria, so it gives a couple of options. And I think the big important part about this that we're continuing to learn from the representative's office is that ongoing community support and feedback is paramount to the success of these projects, even in the consideration process. So if we get guidance today to move forward on these two projects, we'll also be reaching out to the community to access the federal portal that is available to express the support for those two projects. Second to that, formal support of mayor and council is also requested. So if we get guidance today to initiate the application, we'll be bringing something back for consideration to where the mayor could submit a letter of support on behalf of mayor and council to both of those projects as well. Some of the financial impacts aren't exactly clear. Generally, past experience has been that the federal government looks for an 80 to 20% match from the local government as part of the support for that project. And so we've anticipated in our budget review a 20% match, and kind of similar to what we do with federal grants, where the city of Roswell would contribute about a 20% of the total project funding, and we would be requesting the remainder of the 80% of the funding from the federal government in this process. It is a long process. I'm sure it will be highly competitive. As you know, the federal government process goes through a nod of approval, goes over to the Senate and then back for final appropriation. But this is an opportunity to at least submit those projects to be considered, assuming that we get guidance today to do that. Be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Jeff. Councilmember Spano.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Letterman, for expanding the search and of sources of funding. I think it's very important to be creative and try to find any angle that we can have available for potential funding. So I think it's a great initiative. I see that it's just for guidance. So I don't know if you're looking for a motion or not on this item. I see guidance only. So, but yeah, I'm in support of your initiative to reach out to the Office of Congresswoman McBath and see if we can be considered on those two projects or any of those two projects to help with the financing and the funding. Thank you again for your creativity.
Mayor Henry.
I would like to point out that this was an initiative by Lucy McBath. She contacted my office with this offer. And of course, Mr. Leatherman, the department head extraordinaire that he is, jumped right on it. We've also put this offer out to other department heads in the city, and they'll be getting back with me. But this is an initiative by Lucy McBath. She offered this to us through my office.
Councilmember Palermo.
Excellent. Yeah, Mr. Leatherman, thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed getting to read through the packet ahead of time because it's a great opportunity, and really glad you knew to not wait until the Park and Rec Committee, because this is definitely something that I'm really glad you're bringing forward urgently today, and look forward to moving this forward, and fingers crossed, hopefully being able to win that funding and these great projects.
Councilmember Woolsey.
Yes, thank you. I agree. I think these are both wonderful projects and much needed with a very high degree of community support, very valuable to the community. And I think having this opportunity to get some federal funding is wonderful. So thank you for bringing this forward, and we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope to see this come to fruition.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, thank you for bringing these projects forward. Just a couple of quick questions. You had mentioned, or I thought I understood, that we've done projects like this in the past with prior administrations in the 6th district. What were some of those projects, and are there any strings attached if we do something like this?
So the reference to past projects is essentially the former process of the federal earmarks. That was about a decade ago, where federal earmarks were part or considered part of the federal process. I don't know that the city has ever competed, and my understanding is really there wasn't kind of a public input and competition process associated with former federal earmarks. my understanding in speaking and going through a couple of the trainings that have been offered, Congress has really anticipated or is making an attempt to make it a very public and transparent process. And so this is kind of, it's been very last minute essentially, and fairly tight deadlines with, I think, April 9th being the final day to submit public input. And so from our perspective, the strings attached, one is I think to other council's comments that, you know, while the conversation today is relatively easy, the lift in the federal process is long, arduous, and will be, we'll just need to require to really stay on top of it and communicate with the community for their public support. As it relates to strings attached, similar to other grants, with that 20% match, that is really what I would say as the string that would be attached to this is that there would be, not always, but it is highly favorable to have that 20% match or something similar as part of the local contribution into these projects.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Jeff, what do you need?
Great. I think at this point, and it sounds like there's consensus and support, and we'll bring an item back to the next available mayor council meetings for formal support through a letter of support from the mayor's office and have that authorized at a council meeting. In the meantime, what we're going to start to do is initiate the public input and application process. We're on a fairly tight timeline, as I described earlier. That has been moved a bit. The original deadline was next Wednesday. We did receive correspondence from the FAS office that has been bumped until the 9th, I believe, of April. But it still tightens our timeline, being that people are going to be gone for spring break. So we're going to start to initiate that public input process and directing people into the website to support these two projects with your direction today. And then we'll have a couple of follow-on items coming to mayor and council meeting for letters of support. That's all I need, sir.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions or comments from the council on this? Great. Moving on to other items. Item number 10, approval of a resolution to expand Canton Street Restaurant District to include Oak Street to Forest Street. Councilor Judy.
Thank you, Gary. Excuse my yellow lab snoring in the background, but this is similar to what we've done over off Mimosa and down the road, the Norcross variant. I was contacted by a few of the business owners over there to extend our district over to that area on Oak Street, which is becoming quite area with Oak Street Bottle Shop, the Whiskey Project, Zuzu Pizza, and Gate City's opening a tasting room over there as well. I believe this will allow us to continue to attract business to the area over there and keep the area vibrant. So appreciate your support on this.
Thank you. Councilor Palermo.
Excellent. Thank you. I certainly applaud Councilman Judy for bringing this forward. I think I always love an opportunity to help expand our walkable downtown, and I think this is a way that does it. And in fact, actually, love to see the progress being made, and I certainly hope there'll be unanimous support. When I had actually brought this forward a few years ago to go over Highway 9, there was some hesitation and opposition to moving it to the other side of Highway 9, but I'm really glad this council ultimately unanimously supported it. It is my understanding, Mr. Halsey, that the district currently includes the Whiskey Project and perhaps Zuzu, but just doesn't go as far over. Is that correct, Mr. Halsey?
That's my understanding, but I think like half of the block didn't get included for some reason, so this would just take it all the way down to Forest, and that would include all of the businesses that are located without any doubt. So I think it's just to clarify things and to add that last piece.
Excellent. Yeah. So again, I appreciate Councilman Judy bringing it forward, and I certainly support and hope all of council will support this today.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Judy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Woolsey. Any questions or comments from the council? All in favor, please raise your hands. And it is unanimous. Thank you. That's our last item. We are adjourned. Have a good day.